Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film, The Way, Way Back. This is the directorial debut of Jim Rash and Nat Faxon, who both were two of the three writers of The Descendants who weren't Alexander Payne. Duncan, played by Liam James, who is spending the summer at his mom's boyfriend's beach house in a beach community, and he is very bored and kind of doesn't like his mom's boyfriend because he's not very nice to him, and says that on a scale from 1 to 10 that he thinks that Duncan is a 3, and Duncan's really depressed and bored and in the internal purgatory, at least it feels that way, of being a teenager and being dragged to adult parties where you really don't have anything to do. And he gets sick of that and finds the water park Water Whiz and becomes friends with the manager there. Owen, played by Sam Rockwell, slowly gets a job there and loves being a part of the Water Whiz community of employees, and finds himself and starts coming out of his shy shell through his relationship with Owen and his work at Waterwiz, which he does not tell to his mother or his mother's boyfriend, and is a complete secret while he's coming of age in this coming of age summer tale. In a lot of ways I relate a lot to this movie because I was dragged to a lot of adult parties as a teenager, and I was also given some really shitty advice and told really shitty things by parents when I was 14 that was kind of inappropriate, and I look back and I would never say that to a kid, much like the exchange between Steve Carell's character and Duncan. One of the things that why I would get kind of taken down, I guess, verbally or whatever, was because I liked movies. And I think a movie like this is the kind of movie that those adults would tell me is a good movie, is a good film. It's the kind of film that, is good storytelling and about real people. And if you like, a film like Godzilla or a John Woo movie or animation, that was looked at as silly and corporate based on the idea, which is the same idea they have of accepting a movie like this. And the theory is shallow on both ends, I think. The thing about this movie, and even though I relate to it, and even though I kind of like it in some aspects, I think it's too much of a cookie cutter coming of age film. It's too adhering to kind of like a checklist of what a coming age film should be. You have the wacky older guy who's going to teach you about life. You have the girl that he's in love with. You have a wacky kid friend with the lazy eye, and that the kid is coming out of his shell and becoming more of a man. But I mean, this film works a lot better than like Kings of Summer, frankly. It's almost like a Hollywood film. Fox Searchlight is trying to go against the grain and trying to be indie or whatever, but this film feels more like a Hollywood film in kind of that 30s generic, very structured plot way that doesn't feel like it has much of a soul, but is sufficiently entertaining enough on a surface level that you should be entertained. This film is about as comfortable as it is boring because it's just so safe in what it's doing. It doesn't take on too much than it should, which is something that I think the two directors, Jim Rash and Nat Faxon, I think that's how you say his name, that's a problem a lot of movies have, is they take on way too much than they should. And this film doesn't do that. And I like that about this movie. And I think that's smart. And that's something I like about a lot of movies. But since this film is so adherent to being a coming of age summer movie, it feels kind of dull. It doesn't feel exciting. It feels kind of very surface. When I was a kid and people tell me these kind of movies are better, I never really accepted them. I never really liked them as much. And I think, there's a lot of things when you realize eventually that Steve Carell's character, Trent, who's his mom's boyfriend, is kind of a shitty person. What he's saying is wrong. Is kind of when I realized when I was older that a lot of these parents' opinions about movies were wrong because they really didn't know that much about movies. They were just older, and because they're older, they're in fact smarter. And I think that's the kind of the way with this movie is like this movie doesn't challenge itself, and it kind of is about as intellectually stimulating as something Miley Cyrus isn't, but because it's about people, I'm supposed to like it more, I guess. And frankly, most of the time I was thinking about how I really would like to watch that Simpsons episode where they go to a beach house and Lisa becomes a cool kid, but whatever. A lot of times the direction in this is like treading water. Basically, they're more focused on telling the story than doing anything different or doing anything challenging. They are fairly good at it, and it reminds me of being kind of like a 30s movie director, an old Hollywood movie director, and they're like, this is your assignment. You have a coming of age movie to do, and don't veer too much off of it. And I feel like The Way, Way Back does that. In a way, like they're kind of doing the thing a lot of first-time directors do, is just get the story across. Don't try to do too much. But in a lot of other ways, it just doesn't feel very exciting. I like some of the performances, however. I like Sam Rockwell, I think, is the real standout of this film. He's basically playing like a Bill Murray surrogate. He actually understands Bill Murray very well, and you can tell through this performance, because Bill Murray always said in a lot of interviews what he's doing in like Ghostbusters and a lot of movies is he's basically being Cary Grant. And I think Sam Rockwell got the Cary Grant-ness of Bill Murray, and I liked his performance because of that, because you could really, there's a lot of times people in performances will try to do what other actors do and fail miserably because they don't get all that goes into that performance. And Sam Rockwell seemed to understand the mythos and the theory behind Bill Murray, a better Bill Murray than Bill Murray's done in a long time, like in those classic old 80s movies. And I really liked him quite a bit in this. I also actually kind of like Steve Carell being kind of the shitty adult. I know he does kind of meaner stuff more in The Office, kind of meaner, likable guys. And in this, he felt like kind of one of those adults who would just adhere the rules to you because they could, kind of like a dominant animal rather than actual good parental advice. Anna Sophia Robb, who I think is really becoming a bigger actress. I feel like we're going to see more of her in the future. I liked her quite a bit. She's good at playing like at least a little more socially confident than the other guy, Duncan, who played by Liam James, who's very good at playing a teenager. I don't know if it's a case of somebody who's really good at playing themselves, but I thought he was like perfect as a teenager. He reminded me of myself as a teenager, and he's really good at playing that awkward teenage boy who doesn't want to be there. This is kind of what Fox Searchlight does, like what smaller budgeted Hollywood movies used to be. But they pretend, you know, because it's Fox Searchlight, we're all pretending they're like independent movies because this played at Sundance or something. This isn't Jim Jarmusch and this isn't John Cassavetes. It's as surface as all those blockbusters are. It's actually pretty decent at it, but two of the problems with how it's presenting its story is, one, that it's so taking the structure of one of these summer coming-of-age movies. It's just dull. It's not, there's no life to it. And also, I've seen a lot of coming-of-age movies where this film takes itself to a place that you think would totally fail and it succeeds, and then I'm like, you know, this movie's not great, but it's at least interesting. It at least makes me think about what you can do with that structure. And like, I recently reviewed Corvette Summer, and I count that as one, and I'd also think about The Girl Next Door. And they're not great movies, but it's like the things they do within, especially within the third act with both of those, say a lot about the character, make the character confront certain things. And this film felt a little too quick with it and didn't feel like it was really challenging itself. It felt like Jim Rash and Nate Faxon just wanted to get the story across and make it clear. They weren't trying to challenge you as a viewer. They're just trying to kind of surfacely entertain you. And I guess if you're into that sort of thing, you'll like it. I mean, it just feels like too much from the vein of Little Miss Sunshine and The Kids Are All Right. It's a good movie, but it's just so like on the line, so assembly line construction mini major movie. It's a little boring. I almost feel like it'd be more interesting to see a movie fail at doing something interesting than being as assembly line as this movie is. So if you have seen The Way Back and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. This movie really made me want to watch that Simpsons episode. I hope I own it. I don't think I do. Do I? I didn't shave because I felt Sam Rockwell's character didn't, so I'm gonna get away with it. I don't know.